Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the podcast My Granny is Irish, and we are joined again by Nick Delehanty, on from a previous few weeks ago. Nick, you had, I think, a good look at the Sunday papers yesterday, and the Sunday Independent had their usual poll and list of concerns, and also what the polling was in relation to the parties. And in terms of issues of the greatest concern to the voters, the top three, I believe, were housing, cost of living, and immigration. And of course, they're all linked. But none of this surprises you that housing and the cost of living are such a concern to the voters. The cost of living, of course, being an ongoing issue for families.
Yeah, well, the biggest gripe I have with this cost of living crisis is just the naming of it to start off, because it's not a cost of living crisis. I didn't make my life more expensive. It's a cost of government crisis. The government have structurally made new laws and new regulations that have impacted the cost of everyday life, whether it's carbon taxes, whether it's minimum wage hikes, whether it's auto-enrollment pensions, whether it's semi-state bodies or government-controlled things like the port upping their fees and tolls. These are all things that are driving up costs. And I had, a few posts about this during the week, that small businesses have no choice but to up their prices, and employees have no choice but to ask for higher wages. So we're in this spiral of just everyone is going to be putting up their prices. And so my prediction is that €5 coffees and €10 pints are completely inevitable over the next 3 to 4 years.
Well, now you're sounding a bit Thatcherite there, Nick. Is that would be the criticism, right? I sense that you just want to deregulate everything. You want to have a race to the bottom. You want to you want to have a lower minimum wage. Why shouldn't there be the government set a certain wage?
Yeah, okay. Well, like, we can get into should there be a minimum wage? And some people on the Thatcherite side will say the minimum wage should be zero. I don't believe that. There should be a minimum wage. But what they've done to minimum wage over the last 3 or 4 years is astronomical. Like, minimum wage in Ireland has gone up 30% in the last three years. That's huge. And that cost only goes back into the price of your coffees, your pints, or whatever. The employer has to go and find that. But also on top of the minimum wage is, PRSI. People don't realize that if you earn €1,000 in your salary, it actually costs the employer an extra €125 because 11% PRSI. And now what's happening with auto enrollment is there's an extra 1.5% on top of that for the pension scheme. And that's fine. I'm not saying I'm pro, auto enrollment pension as a concept. I think it's good. But what people don't realize is over the next 10 years, that auto enrollment contribution is going to go from 1.5% to 6%. Like the cost of employment in Ireland is going to explode over the next 5 to 10 years. And it's going to drive smaller businesses out. And that's my concern.
Okay, but look, in terms of the €5 coffees, I think that's already with us. Although I have a number of views. I was in Cafe Nero in Drogheda at the weekend, and I always like to check very closely the price of coffees. Obviously, there's a big difference between an espresso, but I think they're Christmassy drinks if you are foolish enough and have a sugar addiction strong enough to their large tiramisu, something or other, is €5.85. Which I think, but the other thing, Nick, isn't this just decided by the market? If people want to spend €5.85 on their large tiramisu Christmas coffee in Nero, I think that's up to them. Again, it just stops a race to the bottom. And I still think the shops and the restaurants seem busy enough to me.
Yeah, they do. We cannot do this. And so just on the coffees, yeah, my coffee is an Americano. It's currently at €4 5 cent in where I buy it. So yeah, the cappuccinos are are more expensive, but I'm basing it on the price of an Americano. But look, all of this is possible in Ireland because we have bumper corporation tax receipts. In November alone, the government took in 10 billion euros from corporate tax. That's the same amount we took in on an annual basis only 8 to 10 years ago. Corporate tax is now almost as high as income tax, which is incredible. Like, we are so highly concentrated on, the top 10 companies or even the top 5 companies, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and whoever else. So all of this is possible at the moment because there is money flowing through the system. But if anything happens to this golden goose, then the house of cards will come crashing down.
Well, look, yes, and governments should also, or should always try and plan ahead. But I mean, people sort of, I don't know. Look, the fact that we're taking in so much corporation tax, is a good thing. Ireland have positioned themselves this way. It's my view is it's other people's problem if they have a high corporate tax, say such as the UK. So, but I think yes, you should always plan ahead and try and anticipate events as much as possible. Although I think people seem to anticipate that the corporate tax golden goose is going to go away all the time. Um, but so what if they're taking in 10 billion in November alone? I think where are they putting this corporation tax? Because the other issue, as we said, the top concern was housing, and second, of cost of living. And I know that the Irish Times, in fairness to them, have done quite a lot of pieces on the commute, and in particular the M50, how congested the M50 is. And I'm happy. Everybody should be happy that the government is taking in 10 billion in corporation tax in November alone. But my big gripe is that never seems to be invested in infrastructure. I mean, the public transport, I think, in Dublin is particularly poor. Obviously, there doesn't seem that the housing is an ongoing problem. So, what is preventing them? Like, again, we're still waiting for the metro line. Why does everything? Why do those big infrastructure projects take so long in Ireland?
Okay, there's a few things there. We are taking in record tax, and that's the best thing ever. We all love that. Okay, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we've got such a bloated intake of corporation tax that it's the perfect opportunity to lower other taxes, whether it's USC, whether it's VAT. So in 2009, at the time of the crash, the top rate of VAT in Ireland was 21%, and then they raised it to 23%, and now we're rich as hell. Why aren't we lowering these VAT rates? Because if you lower the VAT rate, that actually stimulates business. If I
Yes.
didn't have to pay so much tax as a small business owner, I could hire more people. I could expand my business. But I'm just feeding money into this giant system that is the government. And I'm asking, where is all this going? It's going. It's being wasted. A few weeks ago, I put out how we spent 750K on steps. We've just seen this morning the Q3 spend on immigration is at 400 million. We've spent 1.3 billion on that this year. And there's no infrastructure because the biggest story, one of the biggest stories at the moment, is the M50. And what people don't realize is that traffic costs money. If a plumber cannot get to as many jobs in a day because he or she is stuck in traffic, then the price of each job goes up. Okay?
Yeah.
I have a small business. I have 10 vans going around Dublin on the road.
Yeah.
And when I can't get to as many stops as possible, the price goes up. And what actually happens is, if you have a delivery van on the road and you can't cover a wide enough area, you actually end up putting another van on the road. So traffic creates traffic, and it
Yes.
becomes a spiral. And at the moment, there's an article in today's Irish Times by Brian Caulfield, and he's taking this intellectual position that more roads aren't the answer because more roads are bad. And I irk at this type of thinking, in that, yes, more roads create more traffic, but that's more people going about their business, doing things. It comes from the same line of thought that prisons are bad, roads are bad, natural gas is bad. But the answer to everything is, cycleways. We've got to build roads. We've got to build the metro. We've got to build out all of our infrastructure. But it came out again in yesterday's paper that the cost of building an apartment in Dublin at the moment is 600K. And the minister, needs to attack this and how can we lower the costs? But all of these measures that the government are bringing in drive in costs. It's not just the cost of supplies for the building materials, but it's the cost of workers. Their wages are going up. It's the carbon tax that affects every single thing. What people don't realize at the moment is that we've got this. The government has signed up to an increasing level of carbon tax over the next 10 years. So we're in year 7 of this 10-year cycle, where we're currently paying 71 euros per 100 euro CO2 ton. And that's going to go up another 40% to 100 euro per ton by 2030. So things are only going to get more expensive. But the government, all they have to do is lower VAT, lower minimum wage, and they can just de-escalate this spiral. But there's no appetite to do that.
Yeah, no, look, I agree. I think also Ireland seems to be in this weird, there are a number of things. So as you say, that the VAT is higher than the UK. They take in billions of pounds worth in corporation tax, even though the corporation tax is low. Well, the two are linked. Yet in income tax, in OECD countries, we are second last, as in the middle class carry the greatest tax burden compared to all other OECD countries, other than South Korea, right? So as you say, it's not like they said, okay, we've got all this corporation tax, let's lower VAT or let's lower income tax in the middle classes. Okay, that still runs really, really high, whereas other countries would have passed on a tax cut. And then, as I said, okay, if you're going to run a high tax society, at least have something to show for it. But, we still don't have the metro. We still, they built both the Elizabeth line and the Jubilee line, I think, in the last 20 years in London, on top of already, an amazing underground system. And we still can't get the metro going. The children's hospital has been pushed back again. And I don't know if you saw, I think it really sums it up as well. I don't know if you saw this other story a few weeks ago where the new tea rooms proposed for Merrion Square could cost up to £6 million, and it's been a project ongoing for 10 years.
Yeah.
This is for like a tea rooms.
Yeah. The tea rooms are in the same league as the bike shed and the steps and the wall. These small, tiny infrastructure projects just go way out of hand, and the companies behind it never gets called out. But there's a point you made there that Ireland. The best thing about Ireland at the moment, our most fortunate position at the moment, getting all this money in from corporate tax, comes from a policy of low tax.
Yes.
When you have a low tax policy, it encourages business. It encourages people to come and do things. So, look at the things at low tax. We have 12.5% corporation tax, right? So that brings in the best, the biggest companies. Our funds industry. If you set up a fund in Ireland, it has basically 0% tax. Our funds industry is huge. Aircraft leasing is the same. Horse racing and horse breeding, tax exempt. We're the leaders in the world. Newspapers got 0% VAT
Yes.
over a few years ago. The newspapers are all, well, they also get state support. But, my point is, lowering tax creates business. It creates things. But when you have high tax, people are reluctant to go and do things. At the moment, as of January 1st next year, I have a very small business, but I'm going to have to go out and find, I think, my current estimate is 30 grand. My costs from January 1 are just going to go up 30 grand. Auto enrollment, pensions, carbon tax, and everything else. I have to pass that on to the customer. So you might think, oh, minimum wage is great, but like the people earning the money, their prices are going up. So it's not actually doing anything.
So
Um,
why? Yeah, I mean the other issue is that a lot of another thing that pushes prices up are procurement rules. Yeah, so the procurement rules seem to delay everything in terms of trying to get the right contract. But even with those procurement rules, then you still can't get your tea room built. I mean, it seems ridiculous to me. But the other thing that you could say is, well, how come the politicians that set these high income tax rates and other sort of barriers to business, you might say, such as Fine Gael, although you can tell me how they're polling at the moment, but other countries would hold their politicians account for this. I mean, Fine Gael's a right of centre party, and they should be looking to lower tax at least a little, certainly on the middle class. But they never seem to do this. They lower it for the corporations, but they don't seem to follow through on the logic and saying, well, the same boom in business will happen if we pass on the income tax to just to the ordinary middle class. So how are Fine Gael polling then, and why do you think they're never held to account?
yeah, this all of this is we're living in Pascal Donoghue's economy. This is what he created, and he's been lauded. A safe pair of hands. You, like we don't need a safe pair of hands. We've got one of the such a booming exchequer that we should be more ambitious than a safe pair of hands at the moment. But yeah, Fine Gael are polling very poorly. The worst polling statistic that came out over the weekend was, do you agree with the appointment of Simon Harris as Minister for Finance? And 70% of people said no. And you have to agree with them, because this was a self-appointment. He
Yes.
he was Minister for Foreign Affairs. A very Minister for Foreign Affairs is an incredibly important role at the moment. There's big questions about neutrality over Ireland, NATO, our place in Europe, Russia, all that. That's a huge role. But yet finance is always seen as that bit more important. And he wanted to just give himself that role to protect his leadership. But the man has no experience whatsoever in finance. And it just really screams at the point that the ministers in charge, the ones that just hop around from department to department, really don't have a say. Pascal Donoghue was there for 10 years. He dug in, and he had command over what he was doing, to be fair to him, even if I didn't agree with what he did. But Simon Harris is just hopping around. He's been Minister for Justice, Minister for Health, um, uh, Minister for Foreign Affairs, Taoiseach, Taoiseach, and then Taoiseach again. He's the best CV in Ireland.
Look, I think I just genuinely think it's incredible that he could become, I was going to say Chancellor, but Minister for Finance, because I'm sorry, but you couldn't roll like that. I think in most of the European countries, that you've absolutely no experience, as you said, whether it's a small business, whether it would be in the city, whether it was a financial institution. I mean, he has zero experience in finance at all. And now he's, as you said, arguably the most important role in the country. I mean, I hate to default to, well, I don't really hate to, because I always do it. There is a classic scene on this in the thick of it, what I was talking about before, where there's maneuverings within the party, and one guy who knows nothing about finance is maneuvering to get chancellor, and he's just shut down immediately, because even this would have seen it was ridiculous. Malcolm Tucker's like, how is your maths like? You really think you could be chancellor? And he essentially gets outmaneuvered. I mean, there's just a lack of self-awareness. I think if you're not qualified for a role at all, you should say, well, the livelihoods of like millions of people are resting on me making a good decision over something. The fact that, yeah, Harris may be a good politician, the fact that he would take on that role, I just think speaks volumes. I mean, I just think overall, you get the sense that, politicians in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael seem to care more about international opinion, particularly when it comes to climate. As you say, the climate tax is a particular burden than, Irish voters. It's what will the IMF think, and what will what will everybody think in Brussels? And if I don't toe the line when it comes to climate at least, this seems far more important, as I said, than lowering the cost of living for the people who actually live here. But I mean, do you think they could be the next election is a long time away? Do you think they'll be punished for this, or voters will just ask for more of the
Well,
same?
look, I may give out about them, but look at the other things that came out about at this poll. Like the leader with the highest approval rating out of all parties at the moment is Holly Cairns on 40%, Mary Lou on 37%, then Micheál Martin on 36, Simon Harris on 34, and Ivana Bacic on 33. So do I want to live in a world with a rotating Taoiseach of Mary Lou and Holly Cairns? No, I don't. That's an awful lot worse than Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. At least Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, there's people in there that you can actually sometimes cheer on and want to do better. Look at Jim O'Callaghan; he's trying his best. In many respects, there's young guys like Albert Dolan, who are chomping at the bit to get more transparent, financial records out, and he's doing a good job. But as much as we give out about these, at least for Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, it's like, I want you to do better.
Yes.
Whereas the other guys, the Social Democrats, it's like this will ruin the place.
Yeah, no, that would be a nightmare. All right. It doesn't surprise me though that Holly Cairns is the most popular leader right now on that poll. Is that what it said?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, but of course, because she has benefited from this like major media push. I don't know if you know about that. Totally coincidental that she's sort of all over the papers. As I said, she's got very swishy hair. She's very. If you were to dream of your political leader by a spin doctor, Holly Cairns would be someone you'd choose because she looks great on TV, and then she's sort of brought into the Late Late Show as a sort of to give him the ultimate soft appointment or soft interview, and so it doesn't surprise me that although I actually find that quite depressing because it was clearly, as I said, a huge media push for Holly Cairns, and that seems to have translated. I mean, people seem shallow. I mean, if you turn up on the Late Late Show, suddenly now you'd make a great leader of the country. This is astonishing, although somewhat depressing.
Yeah. Holly Cairns she's really been very fortunate. She's landed in this leadership role, but she wins the hearts and minds of people on Instagram because she's as you say, softly spoken, and she can say the nicest things. But there's nothing inspiring to me about it. There's no intellectual vision. There's no tax policies. It's just flowers and butterflies and things like that. They just seem very soft, but they are still very popular because I was talking with someone there the other day, and in Ireland at the moment, because of proportional representation, it's just you get votes by being the nice guy. It's better to stand for nothing than stand for something, and it's a real shame because if you're standing hard on on the left or the right or whatever, you'll get your first preferences, but you won't get transfers. And the left and kind of the Social Democrats at the moment, they got an awful lot of seats on transfers in the last election because they seem neutral to people that aren't paying attention. It sounds good, the Social Democrats. And you'd be surprised, as much as we pay attention, the average voter is not paying attention to I was actually talking to someone, who, very successful guy the other day, and he didn't know what Independent Ireland was. I was like, "What do you mean you don't know?" He's like, "Oh, they're a bunch of independents." He didn't understand the nuance within it, and he has a passing up, uh, interest in politics, but even he couldn't understand it. So I was like, I'm very surprised at that, and it was something that jumped off of me. But if you have this purple logo, Social Democrats, Holly Cairns, she's on the Late Late, looks good, comes time to vote, maybe not number one, but definitely 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I think she's probably very popular with youth voters who essentially don't have much to lose right now, right? If you don't have any capital and you don't own a home and you're stuck on the M50 for your minimum wage job, then you don't have anything to lose by voting for Social Democrats. But the other argument is although in fairness, it's not necessarily for you. I had Pater Tobin on last week, and I probably should have asked him. I mean, why do we have all of these parties on the right? I mean, to me, there seems to be too many. I'm not sure why we even have Fine Gael, and well, I know historically why, but why we have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and then also Aontú and Independent Ireland, other than perhaps the egomania that goes behind it. So I think that is the problem in having so many parties on, I assume, the centre right. Do you think would you prefer to see fewer? I mean, what is the difference between Aontú and Independent Ireland? Do you know?
Yeah, well, Aontú is, very more. It's probably has more better organization, but it's probably, a few years older as well. Um, but we all know the genesis of Aontú, came from Pater leaving Sinn Féin and over the abortion referendum, and so it has its roots there. Independent Ireland, was has its roots in the four TDs or three TDs coming together and forming a rural
Yeah.
independent party. Um, but you would say maybe Independent Ireland are a little bit more pro-business. Independent Ireland and Aontú are a little bit more socially conservative. Look, I've said this too, Patter. I've said, what about independent Aontú? Like,
Yes.
can we get a merger here, or what's going on?
Yeah.
And look,
Yeah.
for different reasons, I'm not sure if it's Patter or I don't think it's on the cards. I don't think anyone's actually
Yeah.
realistically think it's going to happen. But uh, like strategically speaking, like what's the best thing to happen to Ireland from my point of view or your point of view? Strategically speaking, I think is Jim O'Callaghan becomes leader of Fianna Fáil. I think the world could be, a slightly better place overnight if that happens. There are some young voices within Fianna Fáil at the moment, some I mentioned, that are saying kind of the right things that they want. It's not, they just want transparency. They literally want to know where all our money is going.
Yeah.
Um, and if you're able to just, release the files or the data of where it's all going, that will solve a lot of the problems because you'll get people poring over it and there'll be an awful lot of scrutiny on spending. But until we actually get that detail, it's hard to fix the problems because we don't know where the money's going.
Yes, yeah. Well, this is the problem. Look, I think Fianna Fáil probably could do with it change at the moment. Micheál Martin's been in there for a long time. But the other story that people are, well, the RT at least. I mean, I talk about Holly Cairns that magically seemed to be pushed upon us 3 weeks ago. The other thing that I think people spend a lot of time talking about, media outlets anyway, both Virgin and I believe RTE, is the yesterday, after a whole week of talking about Israel, it finished the week off. The organizer of a sporting event held at Herzog Park today has said renaming the park in honor of other people in Irish history who are of Jewish heritage would be way more appropriate. So I wrote about this on my Substack. I think now what we all want for Christmas is an appropriate Jew, a sort of an X factor of Jews where you could get like Holly Cairns, maybe Paul Murphy, who else? Maybe the lads from Kneecap. And we get a couple of Jews there to sort of pitch to them as to whether or not they will be good enough to be the new name of this tiny park that seems to have taken over national discourse. Do you have in mind an appropriate Jew, Nick? Have Israel taken up a huge amount of time in your heads as it seems to have other people in Ireland?
No, look, I think that's a funny analysis though.
Funny because it's
Um,
true.
but it is, look, I'm not pro-Israel. I'm not pro-Palestine. I'm pro-Ireland. I really am. And I think Ireland should be a neutral country. The irony of Ireland pulling out of Eurovision this year. Um, you know, I watched Eurovision last year. I don't always watch it, but I watched it last year. And Switzerland was the host, and the hosts had a song, and it was called "Made in Switzerland," and it talked about watches and chocolate. But there was a line in it, and it said, "We are strictly neutral, non-politically strictly neutral. It doesn't matter if you're good or brutal." And for that to make the psalm of Made in Switzerland, it just goes to show like the culture of neutrality is their culture of neutrality is completely different to ours. You know, they're very militarily capable, but they really do not have an opinion on what's going on in the world. So my question is like, is Ireland still neutral? We're extremely opinionated, or are we just like very trying to be the most moralistic, social justice, international voice out there? And that's not the same as being neutral. Switzerland have signed up to, internationally recognized agreements. We haven't. So I'm kind of saying that, look, if you want to take a stance as a country against Israel, maybe the whole country does, but like we cannot claim to be neutral at the same time, and that's the fear I have because I like our neutrality.
Right. Well, I mean, I just think that, even from a media point of view, this Herzog Park thing is interesting because I think there's only about like 20 people I mean, what I'm trying to say is these guys will lecture you on fake news and extremism, yet they have almost manufactured this story. So we already know, like, RTÉ basically now are not institutionally neutral because they've decided to pull Ireland out of the Eurovision. I don't think it even needed a vote. They're just not going to go to Eurovision that time. So these are the same people who've been covering, who had been covering the war for the 2 years and will tell you that they were neutral in that coverage, which I don't think they were. Then they confirm they weren't because they're going to pull Ireland out because Israel will be there. And then they've been this stupid park story has been sort of rattling on for a while, and then they decide to give again more space to the organizer, singular, of some other football match at Herzog Park, who said, yeah, we need to get an appropriate Jew. And you're like, well, I reckon if 5 people down the road decided to get obsessed with Chad, that would never get the coverage they would. What I wrote on my Substack is that it is now an obsession, and it's a completely disproportionate amount of coverage in relation to Israel. And even if you say, well, you can criticize Israel and not be anti-Semitic, well, okay, it is the only Jewish country in the world, but fine, let's take that argument. It's not anti-Semitic, yes, but it is weird. It is weird to talk about this one single the country all the time, or at least it seems to me all the time. I mean, if you just decided to wrap yourself, if you decided to talk about Chad every day and you were going to be people against Chad and there were going to be marches everywhere against it, people would look at you and think that's a little bit weird. And if you're going to do that against the only Jewish country in the world, then you might want to ask yourself why. And then the other problem, as I said, from Ireland's point of view, is that, and I tweeted a few times, is that if look, Ireland's a really small country and it needs to look like sort of modern and normal and balanced and not run, but the whole place cannot be run by the loony left. And my criticism of Micheál Martin and Simon Harris sort of not so much, not nitpicking at everything they said over the war, but they have let the left, what I would call the loony left, run the agenda on this, so that now Ireland is getting a huge amount of international attention, not good international attention either, from, the Americans, sometimes in the British. It was written about in the Irish Times. And it's like, you know what? Ireland cannot afford to make itself look like an international basket case. And it's now verging on that because, as I said, it's just obsessive. No, you have corporations that want to come and do business here. Surprisingly enough, I reckon the Jews are quite good at making coding, and maybe a couple of them live in work for Google and Facebook. So it's probably best not to make your country very hostile to Israel. Yet, as I said, Micheál Martin and Simon Harris seem to have now they this whole park thing has embarrassed them, and they've said they've come out against the renaming of it, but only because I think that they can see now that this is borderline obsessive and it's seriously compromising, our reputation on the international stage. It just goes also down to basic competency. You cannot let the likes of Paul Murphy, Holly Cairns, and the rest of them just run the show on this issue. It does have international implications, so that's my first concern with it.
Yeah,
And
but
the fact,
look, I don't. If people want to criticize Israel, that's fine. But renaming parks, and to the extent that we allow it, I completely agree. It's like, okay, this we're actually going to do anything here. Um, um, the occupied territories bill. It's not going to do anything. There's a ceasefire going on. Like, it's over. In many ways. Um, so I agree in that respect. But why do people talk about Israel so much? They're a very powerful country. You talk about who are the most powerful secret services in the world. The Russians, CIA, but Mossad are up there. So they're incredibly powerful. They are, and very capable, and they do have some of the best tech companies in the world. And what they've done is incredibly impressive. But if we were to shut them out, like Bank of Ireland, all of our login credentials to Bank of Ireland and AIB are run by Israeli companies. So, like, we need to take all of these things together. But we can still be critical of Netanyahu, and there's lots of people in Israel that are critical. So, I look, the Herzog Park thing, it's just blown way out of proportion. It was a small soccer team that are just fanatical about Palestine. Like, there's so many people in Ireland that are just fanatical. It's all they think about. But there's also people in Ireland that are fanatical about climate change. And
yeah,
and there's also people that are fanatical about asylum, wanting to help the world. Like, these are global problems that we're never going to be able to solve. And my
yeah.
point is, like, can we not just talk about things we can actually solve?
Yeah,
You know,
like I think if you can't build your tea room in 10 years, and it also, I assume, run by Dublin City Council, and it's taking you like it's already at 6 million. You have things further up on the agenda than finding your appropriate due for your park. That I think that's what annoys me and you, is that the priorities are totally skewed, because of course, going on about those things, in a way, it's cost free. Well, it's cost free for them. It's not their jobs that are on the line should the Americans decide to turn the screw. But like when it comes to, as I said, building the metro, getting the children's hospital done, or even building a silly tea room. Well, that would actually involve, hard work, and it's just much easier to pontificate about something that we all know that you have actually zero influence over. But I think it's a good indication of, I think what annoys a lot of people in Ireland is that the lack of priorities when it comes to just getting things done. Now, but so you did mention neutrality there. As you said, neutrality has come under quite sustained criticism, both in the domestic and international press. Are you not guilty, Nick, of freeloading if you want to keep Ireland's neutral stance?
well, listen, I'm happy to live in um, y- y- the world where we are neutral but very much aligned to the West and
Yeah.
America. That I'm very happy. This is the world I grew up in. I'm very happy with that. But just keep our head down. We know that America are going to protect us. We know that we're going to rely on the UK. Um, you know that's not a bad starting position. But Ireland does need to mature, and invest in our defense forces, and do more there. And that's all coming, and that's going to be dictated from Europe. If you actually look at Simon Coveney, he had a very good interview in the Currency there last week, and his new job now is part of a massive fund. It's called Fulcrum, and it's going to invest in defense startups and defense companies across Europe. And I've written about this before, not publicly. I need to put out what I've written about it. But there's an enormous wall of money coming to defense companies and what's called dual purpose companies. So I know you're very critical of the drone delivery company Mana. Um, I'll just openly say I'm a lot less critical. But in fact, I think it's brilliant. But that
I'm against people getting their pizzas delivered by
yeah,
drone, Nick.
no, I
Okay,
understand.
that's just lazy.
I
Just
understand.
make your own pizza.
The technology behind it is brilliant. And but that type of company, I'm not saying that particularly, but that type of company is what would be called a dual purpose, in that has you could just turn a few screws and switches, and in a few weeks that could be launching grenades or doing other you know, mad stuff, or scanning the seas for vessels or whatever. But there's all these companies, and whether you agree or disagree with that type of thing, it's coming. This is a 5 or 10 year bull market for defense companies, and it's something that could benefit Ireland because, you know, all this spending, like, um, innovation happens in times like this.
Yeah.
Where there are preparations for war or whatever, and I don't like, I like us to be neutral, but like if we can house some excellent dual purpose companies that build ships or build cars or whatever, or build a software for ships or build a software for drones, we could do that. We've got natural talent base here. So I think Ireland should be leaning a little bit into that just for the purposes of our economy. Um, and there's a reason Simon Coveney has jumped. That's where he's decided to jump.
Yeah, look, I think there's always I do call myself a conservative, a social conservative, probably a lot more conservative than you are, and there is always a tension between, in a way, you want, I want low taxes and innovation in the economy, but of course that always means change, which builds a tension with with my innate conservative values. So I do have to keep telling myself that change is inevitable, but there is a limit to the change, and it's not always progress. And as I've said repeatedly, getting your pizza delivered by drone is not progress. The military stuff or getting your organ delivered by drone, okay, I don't have a problem with that. They're also incredibly noisy. And I don't, as I believe in property rights, Mick, I don't necessarily want my neighbours, my peace and quiet destroyed by some drone zooming around my garden because my neighbour's been too lazy to cook that evening. So it is, I think it is always a balance between, as change, as you said, is inevitable, and progress, and sort of keeping inherent conservative values. But I think in terms of the freeloading, I actually wrote a rare piece defending Ireland's position in terms of neutrality, because it was almost like, not wanting to be conspiracy theorists, but it was almost a coordinated effort. There were a lot of articles coming. I know you noticed them as well, sort of saying how Ireland was freeloading and how neutrality was a bad thing. But then all the countries that accused Ireland of the freeloading, such as the UK and the US, also have massive amounts of their own national debt. So they do a fair amount of freeloading themselves. And I mean, considering, as we've just said, how high tax the Irish economy is, perhaps freeloading is the one good thing our government does. I mean, maybe I just want to continue freeloading because we pay so much tax for everything else. So,
The point is, and this goes to, we're freeloading, but we're taking on the allies of the people we're freeloading from. We're the biggest voice in the world against Israel, or and the a huge ally to the US. So everyone's like, "What are you guys doing? Like, you're making it difficult." But in many ways, but like if you listen to the new, the schism in the Conservative Party in the US at the moment, a lot of them are very critical of the influence Israel has there. So in many ways, it's a little bit healthy that we do speak out, and we're not totally captured maybe in the same way the US could be in some respects, but we need to be careful because we cannot defend ourselves whatsoever. I always say if 100 or 200 um, uh, KGB, Mossad, or CIA or Navy SEALs arrived on our shores tomorrow, they'd control the place by the end of the day. Like we have
yeah,
our
I mean,
our first round
you're
passed.
Yeah, look, we're benefiting from the safety, security, and defense of other countries, the UK and the US in particular. Yeah, we're very free to criticize them, and indeed how they provide that security. But look, The other issue is that it's I think I have to ask this question because it's too cultural, or it's very cultural, and we've done a lot of tax. So we're coming up to Christmas. The other what I find there's sometimes in Ireland, Nick, I feel like I'm sort of in a sort of a cult like thing, where I'm the only person standing in the middle of the crowd. The Israeli obsession is one thing. Lockdown probably would have been another. Did you watch the toy show on Friday? Did you?
Uh,
Your
it
little one
was
too small?
it was on the TV on Sunday afternoon. We caught
Okay.
the replay, so I saw little bits of it. I saw CMAD. I saw the choir singing, and
Yeah.
look, it is a bit of a tradition, but I don't buy into the whole hype of it all. But I like to see it, continue on and keep
Yes.
going. But we there was a we were trying to buy a cake over the weekend for a different event, and all cakes were sold out because of the toy shop or the
Oh,
toy shop
right.
parties. So
So,
I found that
actually, I'm surprised people haven't. Well, this should appeal to both of us, right? There must be then a toy show economy over
yeah.
and above the actual toys, right? In terms of how much is spent for. That's really interesting that all that there are now toy show parties. Yeah, no, my sister-in-law essentially hosts a toy show party where I have to be dragged to it, kicking and screaming. But I'm not that bad. The kids will go, and she is very kind. She does little baskets for it. But yeah, it definitely must generate then quite some sort of economic kick, right? That now it's adopted. It's sort of a national institution, and people, as you said, seem to have toy show parties and matching toy show pajamas or whatever it is. Yeah, I went into another room because it
But
was too loud for me. But yeah, that's a good thing, I guess.
like we all criticize RT,
Mm,
and I do. And again, it's kind of I criticize it out of a place of love because I want RT to be better. Like I really do.
all right.
I watch or like RT is in a world of social media, small screen, where social media is anti-social media because you do it by
Yep.
yourself. But we're in the house, and whoever's at home, will be little the baby, and if there's family there, y- the big screen is social. Like turn on
Yes.
RT, see what's on, and it's all we watch. And I love Ear to the Ground, Nationwide. These are good
Oh,
shows.
really? Okay. So
And I'll
you
always
still
watch
watch
them.
a fair bit of TV? Yeah, no, I don't watch that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I do it. I do it so I know what's on,
Yeah.
and I can criticize RT. But then the news comes on, and then it's like, geez.
Yeah.
But the Late Late Show in general just is such a stale concept. They need to modernize it. They need to make it a bit more podcasty. Maybe have it more online first. They do another show with the two Johnnies on a Thursday night that is really
Okay.
entertaining if you watch it, but there's no clips. So they don't put it out on social media. It's very hard to rewatch it.
Yeah, look, I think there's probably two things you've done there that are quite separate in a way. Is that I agree with you in terms of it is still nice in this day of antisocial, isolated watching that you still have a family, family sit down and watch a certain program, whether it's the Late Late Show or a movie or a big event. Usually it's a sporting event, right? Because the sporting event is live, so capturing it later, watching it later on an iPlayer isn't, or whatever RT player isn't going to be the same thing. And I definitely think that's great. The other issue that you touched on there though is just that I think the lack of political offering from RT, especially if you compare it to the BBC. Now, obviously, the BBC have a much bigger audience and a much bigger budget, but they have Question Time, which is still the flagship show there. They have Newsnight, they have Newsnight every night, whereas Ireland, like I think so they're getting rid now. They ran Katie Hannon, which I thought was quite a decent format, and now they're winding that down. And then they obviously have Prime Time, which unfortunately I haven't watched in ages. And then you have the Late Late Show that sort of does kind of political stuff and then hides behind the idea that, oh, but we're light entertainment. So what I really objected to with the Holly Cairns thing is that they had a politician on and she was talking about really important subjects, like immigration, right? And she basically got to say whatever she wanted with it's a very, very subtle way the media in Ireland push a narrative. She got to say whatever she wanted, and there's hardly any pushback, from the presenter. And their excuse is like, "Oh no, but we're just an entertainment show." You can't possibly be expecting Patrick Keelty to behave like Jeremy Paxman. Okay, well then don't have a politician on talking about a really important policy issue. Or if
Yeah.
you are, then get Ken O'Flynn on the next week and get Patter Tobin on. No, but they've chose Holly Cairns for a reason because she's nice and fluffy. And as you say, she can talk about a really serious issue in a nice, fluffy way because she's a really nice person. And that translates into votes. So that's
Yeah.
a really subtle, and I think it's an abuse of the license fee for the Late Late Show to operate in that fashion. Yeah, they hide behind this cuddly image, but then they just very subtly will ask somebody else on. I think they had this is going to know. They had Nicola Sturgeon, right? Now she's a
Yeah.
former Scottish SNP, and she just got to do her whole transgender agenda, and she just again, I'm just a really nice person, and this issue, it shouldn't even be an issue. No, that is still a really controversial issue. And what she says gets, again, zero pushback from Patrick Hilty. Will he get on, all of the other politicians on the other side of the transgender issue on next week? No, he won't. No,
Yeah,
he
no,
won't.
there's a complete bias there. And look, this all started, I don't know if you remember back in the late 90s or early 90s when they cancelled Bull Island. Do you remember Bull
No,
Island was,
I was in the UK for that. I now you're talking. Go
Bull,
on, tell me.
Bull Island was an hilarious skit show
Okay.
on primarily on politics or pop culture, and it was close to the bone. And sometimes it would it would maybe go a little bit too far, but they pulled it. And
Yeah.
they pulled it because you can't, stigmatize politicians or whatever. It was just too good. And now, only a few weeks ago or months ago, you had Mario Rosenstock coming out saying that comedy is dead on RT, and they're scared to take risks. And their comedy show now is the Two Johnnies. And in fairness, the Two Johnnies put on a good performance, but they're very, they're not trying to be controversial. They're really, really middle Ireland, good, wholesome fun. Some people don't like it, but I think it's grand. Um, but yeah, there's nothing controversial. They got rid of Katie Hannon, and you want that back. But look, what they're doing is they're actually providing a market to Gript. And here we are, this would be on YouTube, and YouTube is big screen. Like I know I watch a lot of RT, I say, but I will first watch YouTube, so um, and I know more and more people that just watch YouTube. Even my dad gets YouTube up on the TV. So if they're not going to do it, it leaves the door open for all of us to go and do it ourselves.
Yes.
And there should be no excuses really, for us to capitalize on that.
Okay, well, I feel like you've put me under scrutiny, or that's some sort of veiled criticism. No, it's fine. The
That wasn't the way to do it. We're
I'm
doing it.
joking. I'm only I'm joking. I'm joking. No, I mean, I think, yeah, you look, you're right in that it should provide a gap in the market, but it never has quite the same cut through. But I think it's worth examining, for instance, why they got rid of Katie Hannon. I liked her as a presenter. It's not a personal issue, but I think the big issue is that you just knew what everybody was going to say. So I think what's left now is the Virgin show at 10 p.m., which, yeah, kind of annoys me sometimes, but they still do a decent job. But that's essentially now, that on prime time, I guess, is the only are the only ones left. Yeah,
I'll send something on the current iteration of Virgin. I was on it. The clip
yeah.
of me went viral with Cudahy, but he's gone now, and now they've got Fionn Sheehan in, and Fionn Sheehan's a brilliant journalist, really is, and he cracked some incredible stories. He just doesn't seem like a natural presenter of the show. It seems like he's holding that position for they need to. They're trying to recreate Vincent Brown, haven't been able to do it. Um, and again, it's on very late. Who's staying up to watch that in a world of clips?
Well, people watch it on. Yeah, no, I don't watch it either, but they do watch it online. Well, maybe he it might take time to for him to find his feet. Who knows? But
He's a
he said
better
I did.
guest. He's a better guest on the show because he's often on the show. You just have to find these
Yes,
people, and maybe they'll find them. I don't know, but I do think the format these days is podcasts.
yeah.
That's what people are consuming.
But
And
I think we should be aware, as I said, that the Late Late does have this. It's a very subtle and indeed clever way of pushing a very specific agenda, where they just they put out what are very controversial and highly contested views as if this is gospel.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is done on your license fee,
but
in a really softy format.
who was the head of strategy in RT for the last 10 years or so?
You tell me. I don't know.
Simon Coveney's brother. So like,
That's outrageous. That's just
but like that's the fact. He's not there
yeah,
now, but like so where does Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil start and RT end? And if
yeah.
Sinn Féin were to get into government, would they appoint their own people in there? So it's a tool of the state. And it is state broadcasting. So they're not going to do anything that trips them up. And that's why it should be more independent. It should be a little bit more commercial. They shouldn't have to rely so much on state funding. There's easy wins for them to generate their own money. If you could pay €10 a month or less for the RT player, while living in London or wherever, you would pay it. I would pay for the BBC iPlayer
No,
now.
I want BBC iPlayer. Everybody knows.
No,
Yeah, that's what I want.
these are
Yeah.
revenue generators. Why don't they open it up and allow
Well,
people to
look,
pay
you
for?
can't even get BBC Sounds on the phone anymore, which really annoys me. I
Yeah,
get Radio 4 in my car though.
but
That's if that goes, I'm moving back. I
RT is not incentivized to make commercially viable decisions because it doesn't need to be commercially viable. The state
yeah.
just bails it out. So therefore, you're going to get very controlled shows, and some which are
I also think what I object to it most, Nick, is genuinely is just how boring and predictable it is. Just from a journalistic point of view, like have a crazy left wing person on there if you really want to, But it's even the left wing people they have on are boring and predictable. I
well,
mean,
it's
it's just a waste. It's a waste.
there's even it's actually worse than that. There's a way to speak. Like I watch the news every single night because again it's just habit, and it's like Tommy Mescal in London reporting for RT News. Like there's the voice, and they all have the voice, and you have to be trained in the voice to do it. You have to sound
Yeah.
like you're not from the back arse of nowhere in Cork or Blanchardstown
I like
or
the voice. No, I like the voice. They got rid of received pronunciation on BBC. I want it back. Yeah, I like
well,
the
I'm against the voice because it shows you that you're a cook. You're a cookie cutter, news presenter with no character and personality.
yeah. Well, I always sort of my ribbing is that the Late Late or the how people and the president, everybody seems. I didn't even know. Do you know there's a department for the diaspora in Ireland? Did you know this?
I didn't know that. No.
Can you just represent the people who actually live here? Yeah, so and you know how they get all like really misty eyed about the diaspora, and we're gonna get on your granny was Irish, right? Do you know whose mother is Irish? Tommy Robinson. This is what I want to see him on the Late Late. But that would actually, people would watch that and challenge him, right?
Yeah.
You can challenge him. But do your misty-eyed thing with Tommy Robinson. I want to know where Tommy Robinson's mum was from in Ireland and how she got on when she moved over there. And clearly he decided to integrate. And but they would never do that because it's just like it will just it's just terrible. It's just terrible.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah. You have to entertain conversation, but yeah, they're never going to get on Tommy Robinson. But there's other examples too that, like as you mentioned Ken O'Flynn earlier, like
Yeah, well, this is I know
or the
it's
leader of it,
crazy.
or as
And he
Patter.
has good hair. He has good hair as well, because obviously they like Holly's hair
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can talk about that. Oh God, yeah. No, they're bad. Okay, well we're gonna leave it in a minute, but before you go, this probably will be the last of this podcast before Christmas. So you're going to give me I don't want to put you on the spot. Maybe, well, at least one of your favorite Christmas movies, if not maybe three. I watched one yesterday, so I'll go on about in a minute. What's your favorite choice now of a Christmas movie?
There's all the, the Harry
Don't say
Potters,
something serious.
yeah, yeah. But a very good one, an actual good one to watch over Christmas with older family.
Oh,
We used to watch it with my granddad. Was Dunkirk, because it's World War II film, and brings it back, and so it's an epic. So I'm going to say Dunkirk.
Dunkirk. Forget that's that. No, come on. Okay, I need one that you'd watch with the kids. You're not going to watch Dunkirk with. I know
Look,
your
it's
little one is
epic.
four.
It's a brilliant movie. Well, Harry
Yeah,
Potter you're gonna watch with the kids. My kid's very small, so he doesn't know.
yeah,
But, you want an epic movie.
yeah.
Um, uh,
Wow,
I
that I actually I'm not sure I've watched Dunkirk, which is
well, there you
unusual.
go.
I
Well,
do watch because it's slow. Oh, who directs it again?
it's the same guy as in Inception. What's his name?
Um, I think I remember watching the beginning of it. I know this sounds really bad, but I just thought, God, this is actually really slow. I'm
No, it's
like,
brilliant. It's all
and
got to do with time. It's very
I
good,
know
and
what hap
it's very good.
yeah, I know what happens, and yeah, like, yeah,
Yeah, but
it's
yeah, so
look,
I like history. I like real world movies, so
look,
that's it for
so
me.
do I. Well, have you watched The Darkest Hour then? While we're on,
Yes.
yeah, now that's exceptional.
Yeah.
I definitely I watched that a few times. Now I've watched my Platoon and stuff like that, but I watched well back onto the Chris. I'm not going to watch Dunkirk with my 3-year-old or my 4-year-old, but I watched The Grinch with my 4-year-old and my 10-year-old. Yes, God, I love that movie. Have you watched the animated one yet?
You see, I'm not there yet with kids
I
films.
know he's only oh
I'm getting
God,
there.
it's just and I'm a bit of a Grinch. I have to pace yourself a crick. God, I love that movie so
I
much. It is
Yeah,
just
I was at a
so good.
Christmas panto last week, and I found myself
Oh,
enjoying it completely.
yeah.
So I think I will like all the kids' films once I start getting
Which
into it.
yeah, yeah. Now you gotta watch them. I'm not, I don't want to pull ranking. You can't be watching them with your phone or anything like that. Like you gotta go all in. The phone is off.
Well,
Yeah,
we've the rule, and I'm enforcing no phones or screens, no small
yeah.
phones, or no small screens at all in
That's
the
a big
room
screen.
with children.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Oh, that's very good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think I watched I did rewatch Beauty and the Beast last year with him. I think I might watch it again. God, I just love that movie as well. But the other which panto did you go with to then?
it was on the Helix, and
Oh,
it
we
was
go to that one.
the Snow Queen. It was called the Snow Queen, um, or
Yeah.
something like that. It was brilliant, very good.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's good. Great. Because 'cause I'm due to go to that on, like, the when the kids break up from school. Yeah, we've gone to that one for at least 10 years. They're not paying us to say this. In fact, when we lived in London and we came home, we always that's the panto we always went to. So, yeah, I think they're really, really, really good.
That was
Really
brilliant,
fun.
yeah, and again, there was a place no phones for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Everyone was enjoying it. It was great. Yeah, the phones
Did
are
you
a
bring
big thing.
yeah, did you bring your little one? 'Cause they're only f was he alright at it?
Yeah, yeah, he had his earmuffs on, and
Okay.
he lasted the first hour, and then he
And
started crying, so we were like, "Come on, we're
you
gone."
brought him out and
He
yeah,
he
yeah.
he he enjoyed the whole thing. It was something to do, yes, it was good.
Oh, good. Okay, yeah, because mine is 4, so I was a bit concerned, but I think he'll be fine. It is loud. I know that, but,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Oh, they do a great job there. They're just so funny. Last year, they were going on about Westlife and the key changes. Oh my God, it was so funny. I still
Yeah,
remember it so oh, I'm glad they did a good job this year, yeah?
yeah, so my Christmas movie is Go to the Panto.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I agree. Or yeah, because they need. They're probably sold out. But both the Gaiety, I have a friend who goes. I don't go to the Gaiety one, but I have friends that do. But the one in DCU is really good. Okay. Well, look on that upbeat note. I've got some mince pies this morning. I don't care. I'm just gonna make my way through those for the rest of the week.
Well, happy
Uh,
Christmas.
yeah, yeah. Look, have a great Christmas, Nick, and we will see you afterwards.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
Okay, take it easy. Bye.